In the depths of a moonlit night, Princess Amaka's voice quivered with emotion as she continued her tale, her eyes locked onto Dyke's attentive gaze. The weight of centuries of history hung heavy in the air between them. "My love," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "our kingdom's past is steeped in blood and sorrow. 1,000 years ago, we were not the proud nation you see today, but a mere fragment of the vast APA empire, a realm of witches and warriors that stretched as far as the eye could see." Dyke's brow furrowed, confusion etched across his face. "The APA Empire? Surely you mean the APA Kingdom, the village that borders our lands?" Amaka shook her head, a sad smile playing on her lips. "No, my dear Dyke. What you know as the APA Kingdom is but a shadow, a fading remnant of its former glory. The empire was a juggernaut, a force that devoured kingdoms and bent nations to its will." As she spoke, her eyes grew distant, as if peering into the mists of time. For centuries, the APA warriors, fueled by dark magics, conquered all who stood in their path. Our people, your ancestors and mine, suffered greatly under their rule. Our riches were plundered, our women forcibly married to pure-blooded APA men, and our people, oh, how they suffered. Dyke's hands clenched into fists, his jaw tightening at the thought of such injustice. Amaka placed a gentle hand on his, her touch soothing the fire in his heart. "But our people were proud, Dyke. Even in the face of such tyranny, they held on to hope. Every night, in secret, the men of our tribe would gather in the village square, their voices rising in desperate prayer to the gods, begging for the strength to break their chains." Her voice dropped to a hushed tone, as if sharing a forbidden secret. Some claimed to receive divine revelations, promises of power that would rival the APA warriors. They formed resistance groups, ready to challenge their oppressors. But Dyke, oh Dyke, they were slaughtered. In mere minutes, these brave souls were cut down, their blood staining the earth they sought to liberate. Dyke's eyes widened in horror. "But how? You said they received strength from the gods. How could they fall so easily?" Amaka's eyes glimmered with unshed tears. "Because, my love, they underestimated the cunning of the APA. You see, the APA warriors were more than mere soldiers. They were a clan of powerful witches, their strength born of dark rituals and forbidden magics." She leaned closer, her voice dropping even lower. "During those nights of desperate prayer, the APA king, the cruel King Mogu, decided to teach his rebellious subjects a lesson. He sent his most feared warriors, the Asham Mar, to sow confusion and discord among our people." The air seemed to grow colder as Amaka's words painted a picture of ancient betrayals and dark magic. Dyke found himself drawn deeper into the tale, his heart racing with each revelation. Little did he know that this story of the past would soon collide with their present in ways he could never have imagined. As the night deepened around them, Amaka's voice took on a mesmerizing quality, drawing Dyke deeper into the ancient tale of their people. The forest seemed to lean in, listening to the secrets being revealed. "The Asham Mar," Amaka continued, her eyes gleaming in the moonlight, were King Mogu's elite army of witch warriors. They were masters of illusion and deception, able to cloud the minds of our ancestors with false visions of divine revelation. Dyke's brow furrowed, his mind racing to connect the pieces. "Wait," he interrupted, his voice tinged with dawning realization. "Asham Mar, that sounds eerily similar to the Asham Mar who just attacked us. What's the connection?" Amaka smiled sadly, acknowledging the astuteness of her beloved. "You're right, my love. The names are indeed connected, but please, let me finish. All will become clear." She went on to paint a vivid picture of their ancestors' despair, of years of futile resistance against the APA Empire's supernatural might. The air grew heavy with the weight of history and lost hope. But then Amaka's voice lifted, a note of pride entering her tone. "Your family changed everything." Dyke leaned forward, his heart pounding with anticipation. Amaka's eyes sparkled as she revealed the tale of Otimba, Dyke's great-great-great-grandfather, the first seer. Otimba was born a sickler, much like me, she explained, her voice soft with empathy. But his condition was far worse. He could barely walk, talk, or eat. His parents struggled to care for him, working tirelessly to provide for their disabled son. As Amake's recounted the fateful day when Otimba's power was discovered, Dyke's eyes widened in awe. The story of his ancestors' unexpected ability to repel the Asham Mar's magic filled him with a mix of pride and disbelief. But how, Dyke asked, his voice barely above a whisper. How did Otimba gain such power? Amaka's response was both surprising and profound. It was because of his sickness, my love. Otimba's condition had unknowingly consecrated him to the gods. He was pure, untouched by the outside world, by the APA's influence, and in that purity he found power. As she explained the revelation of the Aki, the ritual of cleansing and concentration, Dyke began to pace, his mind reeling with the implications. The formation of the Asham Mar's, the sacred warriors of their people, suddenly took on new meaning. So the Asham Mar's, Dyke said slowly, comprehension dawning on his face, they're consecrated warriors, and to join, one must take an oath of eternal concentration. Amaka nodded solemnly. Yes, my love. And now you begin to understand the gravity of what I'm about to tell you. My father, King David, was once an Asham Mar himself. Dyke's breath caught in his throat. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they formed was one of conflict and heartache. But how did he break his oath? Dyke asked, his voice barely above a whisper. And how are you involved in all of this? Amaka's eyes glistened with unshed tears. That, my love, is where our story truly begins. For in breaking his oath, my father set in motion events that would shape not only my life but the future of our entire kingdom. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the rest of the tale to unfold. In the distance, unknown to the couple, the defeated Asham Mar's were regrouping, their thirst for vengeance growing with each passing moment. The stage was set for a clash between past and present, between love and duty, that would shake the very foundations of their world. I told you this entire story, not just to recount history, but so you would understand. Amaka began, her voice trembling with the weight of her words. With the strength bestowed upon us by the gods after consuming the sacred elixir, we rose up against the oppressive Moss Empire. We reclaimed our lands, igniting a rebellion so fierce that it inspired neighboring kingdoms to fight for their freedom as well. The once mighty APA Empire was reduced to nothing but a shadow, a sliver of what it once was. She paused, the firelight dancing across her face, casting flickering shadows that mirrored the turmoil in her heart. And after the war, the Asham Mar warriors, heroes, every one of them established a new government. They crowned my ancestor, a great Kinmagrit leader, as king. It was the beginning of my family's dynasty, the start of a legacy that still holds power today. But before she could continue, Dyke interrupted, his tone sharp and impatient. Amaka, please. I'm tired of this history lesson. I only asked one thing. Why do you believe your father sent these men after us? You still haven't answered that. And now you're telling me about a war one already know the outcome of. His frustration was palpable. This was a mistake. We should set up camp. Night is here, and after that battle we need rest. The journey ahead to the curse-stacked by evil forest will be treacherous without our royal guards. We need our strength. Amaka's face hardened, her eyes flashing with anger. Shut up, Dyke. Just shut up and listen. She stood, fists clenched. Do you think this is easy for me? Do you think I want to drag you through the history of our people? I'm not trying to bore you with things you already know. I'm trying to explain why. Dyke cut her off, his tone softer but no less urgent. Why what? What are you trying to tell me, Amaka? What aren't you saying? Amaka's voice faltered, her bravado crumbling. Her next words came out in a choked whisper, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Dyke. After my ancestor became king, every firstborn child of the king was a man. It was tradition, divine law. The heir had to take a wife from the tribe to prove his maturity before ascending the throne. It's been this way for 1,000 years, but with me, it was different. Dyke's voice was low, his confusion deepening. Different how, Amaka? What are you saying? With a trembling breath, she confessed, I am the firstborn of my parents, but I am a girl, and the gods cursed me with this muscular, man-like body. She shuddered. My father broke the sacred laws of the Asham Mar. He took an outsider, a woman from the APA Empire, as his wife. My mother is of APA descent. Her voice cracked on the final words, and she collapsed under the weight of her confession. Dyke stared at her, his mind reeling with the revelation. Silence fell between them, thick and suffocating, as the fire crackled in the night. His lips parted to speak, but no words came. For long moments, they stared at each other in the oppressive quiet. Just as Dyke was about to break the silence, a distant sound cut through the air, the unmistakable thudding of hooves. Marching horses, their rhythm growing louder, closer, until they were nearly upon them. Amaka shot to her feet, her body tense, ready for battle. But before she could fully rise, they were surrounded. From the darkness emerged the remaining warriors of the Asham Mar, led by their captain, Farouk. The firelight glinted off their armor, their eyes hard and resolute. Farouk stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "We are not cowards, princess. We are warriors. And a good warrior knows when to retreat and when to strike. The time to strike is now." He leveled his gaze at her, the weight of his words heavy in the air. "Stand down, Amaka. Come with us as our captive, or face all 10 of us in battle." Amaka's body tightened, her muscles coiling like a predator about to spring. Without a word, she launched herself at Farouk and the 3 warriors beside him. Her fists flew, connecting with bone-crushing force. She fought with the fury of someone whose very soul was on fire. Meanwhile, Dyke struggled against the 7 warriors who had descended upon him. He managed to take out 2, his gunfire sharp and precise, but it wasn't enough. They overpowered him, their swords slicing into his sides, their bullets tearing into his leg. He fell to the ground, paralyzed and bleeding out. Amaka, oblivious to his fate, had defeated Farouk's 3 companions. She now stood over the captain, her hands around his throat, fury burning in her eyes. "Why are you doing this?" she snarled, tightening her grip. "What is your goal? Did my father send you?" Her voice cracked, the weight of betrayal evident as her fingers dug deeper into his neck. Farouk, struggling for breath under Amaka's iron grip, rasped, "I've already told you. This is your father's wish. You, of all people, should know that the Asham Maris are no liars. If you truly respect your father, King David, you will surrender." As his words sank in, Amaka's hand froze on his neck. Realization crashed over her like a tidal wave. She stumbled back, releasing him, her mind spinning. Could this be true? Before she could catch her breath or make sense of it, a sharp groan of pain pierced the night. Amaka whipped around to see Dyke, bloodied and broken, being dragged to his knees by the 7 warriors who had ambushed him. Her heart clenched, and without hesitation she screamed, "Release him. Now. You let him go, or else." The warrior holding Dyke sneered, cutting her off, his voice cold and mocking. "Or else what? You think you're invincible, don't you, little monster? Maybe you could take all of us. But your little boyfriend." He chuckled darkly, tightening his grip on Dyke's neck. "Look at him, bleeding out. One more hit and he's gone. If you want him to see the morning sun, you'll surrender and come quietly. Or, I'll end him here and now." Amaka's heart pounded in her chest, anger boiling in her veins. But before she could react, the warrior continued, his tone dripping with contempt. "What makes you think you even have a choice? Look at your precious leader Farouk on the ground. I watched you take him and 3 of my brothers down in seconds. Impressive, sure. But here's the thing, leaders are replaceable. Boyfriends, not so much." The warrior laughed cruelly. "How long did it take you to find a man who could love a freak like you? With that hideous muscular body? Bet it took years. And now you'll watch him die because you think you're some kind of hero. Go ahead, finish off Farouk. It'll be the last thing you do before I break your Dyke like a twig." Amaka felt her blood turn to ice. His words hit deeper than any blade. Could she really risk Dyke's life? The air around them seemed to thicken, heavy with dread and decision. Her muscles tensed as she fought to control her rising fear, her gaze darting between Farouk's limp body and Dyke's tortured face. She couldn't let him die, not like this. With a deep, shaky breath, Amaka let her hands fall from Farouk, her voice laced with quiet anguish. "All right, you win. Let Dyke go and I'll surrender. Take me to my father." From behind her, Dyke's weak voice cracked through the tension. "No, Amaka, don't. Whatever they want to do to me, I can take it. Please, These men, they're hired killers. Don't trust a word they say. Don't go with them." Amaka's chest tightened. She could hear the pain in his voice, but she couldn't let him die. Not for her. "I have to, my love," she whispered, her voice thick with sorrow. "I can't risk your life. Not for this." With that, she stepped away from Farouk's body and slowly knelt, lowering her head in surrender. The warriors wasted no time. They bound her wrists with heavy chains, pulling her roughly to her feet as they secured her to a horse. Farouk, who, barely conscious, was hoisted up beside her, his body limp and bloodied. The warriors mounted their steeds, dragging Amaka and Farouk away into the moonlit night, leaving Dyke alone, broken and bleeding on the cold ground. As they rode off, Amaka cast one last, heart-wrenching glance over her shoulder at Dyke, lying motionless by the riverbank. Her heart ached with uncertainty. Would she ever see him again? The night closed in around them, swallowing her in a sea of doubt and fear. All she could think of now was why. Why had her father waited so long to act on the Brotherhood's twisted wishes? Her mind swirled with confusion, shame, and fear. Had everything been a lie? Back at the river, Dyke lay in the dirt, slipping in and out of consciousness, each breath more labored than the last. Rage and heartbreak consumed him as he relived the events of the night, the revelation of Amaka's cursed lineage, the betrayal of her father's warriors, and now, the sight of Amaka being taken from him. His heart shattered into pieces as her words echoed in his mind. By dawn, Dyke's body was wrecked with pain. His wounds, left untreated, had festered overnight, and his skin was burning with fever. He tried to move, but agony shot through him, forcing him back down with a strangled cry. His cries grew louder, hoarse and desperate, echoing through the forest. His hope was slipping away, until suddenly. A voice. "Who's there? Who's making that noise?" The voice was distant, but carried a note of concern. "You're scaring me. Are you all right? Are you okay?" Dyke, barely able to speak, called out in a weak, raspy voice, "Help. Please help me. I'm not crazy. Please, I need help." Dyke lay broken and bleeding by the riverbank, his body covered in dirt, bruises, and deep cuts. The sharp pain radiating through him made it difficult to think clearly. Alone, with no one familiar around to help, he knew the river was a place few ever ventured. Its reputation for danger had kept it secluded, and now he feared it would become his final resting place. Just when hope seemed lost, a voice called out from across the river. It was soft, almost melodic, but strong enough to break through his delirium. "Okay, but where are you? I can't even see you, only hear your voice," the person called, the sound carrying over the water. Dyke strained to respond, his voice raspy, barely audible. "Follow the sound of my voice, please." Then, in a moment of clarity, he noticed something in the voice. It sounded feminine, like that of a young maiden. He coughed, trying to speak again. "Wait, are you a lady?" he asked, his voice shaking from weakness. There was a pause before the voice replied, somewhat surprised, "Yes, I am. What does that matter?" Dyke, despite his pain, quickly responded, "Nothing. I was just curious. Your voice. It sounded very feminine." The voice across the river chuckled softly, not unkindly. "You asked where you were. Just take your right and follow my voice. When you reach the biggest tree, stop and check behind it." Dyke, using the last of his strength, gave a faint, desperate yell. "Okay." The woman, who had been carefully navigating the forest path, followed Dyke's instructions. The deeper she went, the thicker the mist became, wrapping the towering trees in an eerie, ghostly blanket. Eventually, she reached the massive tree he had mentioned. She stopped, her heart pounding, and circled around it. What she saw made her gasp. There lay Dyke, beaten, bruised, and bloodied beyond what she had imagined. His clothes were torn, his skin pale, and his breath shallow. He was a shadow of the man he had once been, and the sight shook her to her core. She knelt beside him, and as Dyke opened his eyes, he looked up at her. Through the haze of his injuries, he saw her face and was struck by her beauty. But in his delirious state, he mistook her for someone else. "My love." Amaka, Dyke whispered hoarsely, his voice trembling. You came back to me." The woman's expression softened, but she shook her head gently. "No, I'm not Amaka," she said softly, her voice filled with empathy. "My name is Elizabeth." Dyke heard her words, but as his mind tried to process them, he felt his consciousness slipping away. "Elizabeth," he muttered weakly, the name echoing in his mind as he drifted into unconsciousness. Meanwhile, back at the royal palace, the early morning light cast long shadows across the grand courtyards. Inside the royal chambers, Amaka, once a fierce warrior princess, stood in chains before her father, King David. The Asham Mar, the king's most loyal and ruthless soldiers, had dragged her into the throne room as if she were a criminal awaiting judgment. Amaka's once proud stance was broken, though her spirit remained defiant. She lifted her head, her eyes meeting her father's. "Father, what is going on?" "The Asham Mar ambushed me in Dyke. They slaughtered dozens of your guards, and they did it in your name. Please, tell me that's a lie. Tell me they are liars and punish them for this crime." The king's face darkened with rage, his eyes, cold and unforgiving, locked onto his daughter. "Silence, you treacherous beast," he roared, his voice echoing through the chamber. Amaka flinched but remained steadfast. "Father," she continued, her voice cracking, "how can you speak to me like that? Please, tell me this isn't true. Is it because I didn't say goodbye before I left? What is going on?" Her voice wavered, a sob escaping her throat. "Please, tell me it's not true." King David's eyes blazed with fury. "Would you keep quiet, child? After everything I've done for you, you still chose to betray me. After I was cast out by my clan, after what happened to your mother, after I waited decades for you to marry, no man would touch your beastly body with a 10-foot pole." Amaka recoiled, tears streaming down her face. "Father, why are you talking like this? It's me, Amaka. Have you forgotten yourself?" The king's expression twisted into one of bitter contempt. "I haven't forgotten, child. I remember all too well what your birth has cost me. And now you dare try to bite the hand that fed you? You and that bastard hunter, plotting against me to steal my throne." Amaka's eyes widened in shock. "What? How? Who told you such lies?" she asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. The king sneered. "It was your sister, Precious, who showed me your treachery." At that moment, Precious stepped into the room, her face lit with a cruel, triumphant smile. She glided toward their father, her presence oozing with malice. "Yes, father," she said sweetly. "Unlike my sister, I have always been loyal to you." Amaka's heart sank as she stared at her sister, betrayal twisting deep within her. "Precious, this is your doing," she cried out, her voice cracking. "Father, you have to believe me. Precious framed me, she's lying." Precious' eyes gleamed with cruelty as she spoke. "Enough, father. Send her to the dungeon. She's a traitor and deserves no mercy." King David's voice boomed across the chamber. "Very well. Asham Mar, take my treacherous daughter to the royal dungeon and lock her away. I don't want to see her face ever again." Amaka screamed in desperation as the guards dragged her away. "Daddy, please, please don't do this. Precious is lying." In the cold, damp dungeon, Amaka collapsed onto the floor, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her heart ached with confusion, betrayal, and loss. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? How had she ended up in chains while her treacherous sister walked free? Her thoughts drifted back to Dyke. She had left him behind, injured and vulnerable, near the Agbasha forest. Was he alive? Had he survived? The thought of him lying alone in the wilderness sent a fresh wave of grief through her. She prayed silently, hoping against hope that he was still alive. Miles away, in a small, humble home, Elizabeth was caring for Dyke. After he had fainted by the river, she had brought him back to her house, bandaging his wounds and tending to his injuries with herbal remedies. Her parents had been skeptical, questioning why she would bring a strange, injured man into their home, but Elizabeth had insisted. Thank you for watching this unfolding tale. I am grateful to all who waited for part 3. It takes a lot of time to create these videos, but we are almost at the conclusion of this beautiful story. The saga of the Big Muscular Princess is a 5-part narrative, and you've witnessed the first 3 parts. The remaining 2 will soon bring it to an end. If you would like me to make part 4 and continue this saga, please comment part 4th below and share this video with your friends and family. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you'll be the first to know when I release the next installment. If you missed the first 2 parts or wish to re-watch them, they are available now. Thanks again for watching and have a lovely day.